Welcome everybody to a very special presentation of Brainspotting Canada Presents. This is Marjorie's rebranding of our evening get-togethers. And we have a very special evening, as you all know, Two Eyes Seeing with Dell Ducharme and Ovide Caribou. Two Eyes Seeing. So I'm just going to briefly introduce both Dell and Ovide, and then they may choose to say a little bit more about themselves. So Ovide Caribou is a knowledge keeper of Cree descent, and he is from a northern community in northern Manitoba, and he's going to be sharing with us his experience and knowledge, helping us learn. Dell Ducharme is on our Brainspotting Canada board and is a brainspotting trainer, and is also partners with the one and only Allison Coleman right here. Yeah, a dynamic duo. Dell is of Métis descent and is a clinical psychologist and a all-around delightful human being.
Thanks, Jane.
Over to you, my friends.
Yeah, I think the only thing I will add, and Ovid, if you want to add, regard yourself, is my spirit name is Running Wolf, Rolling Thunder.
My spirit name is Missy Muskie Masqua, and that means big medicine bear. That's what they call me. My bloodline is goes far, and parts of it is with Big Bear from the Church River that runs to the mountains, so to the Hudson's Bay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
And my grandmother, my great grandmother, is of the wolf, and my other side, my mom's side, is of the bear. So that's who I consult with most of the time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ovid. Just for our American folks, we use the terms Indigenous, our First Nation, to refer to Indians. The name Indian comes from the Indian Act, which is in Canada, but because of the history, it's not something that First Nation really want to be referred to as, and often will go to their lineage, such as I'm Cree, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, just so you know. So we will be using the words Indigenous or First Nation interchangeably. The talk is on two-eyed seeing, and we are kind of presenting on a mix of Western and traditional. And because of that, you will be getting traditional with Ovid and myself. So sometimes traditional and Western do not mix. Very different ways of presenting and sharing knowledge, and not necessarily respecting time as we know it. So we know we have a certain amount of space. We will fill it, but if people can also be patient with the cultural aspect of how information will be shared. Okay, I want to start with land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we're speaking from Treaty 1 territory, or I am in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. This territory is the original land of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. In our acknowledgement, we accept the truth that the land on which we live was stolen, as was the way of life of those who originate from what now is referred to as the Americas. Prior to settlement, land was of paramount importance to the Indigenous peoples, as it served as a connection to the Creator and to the wider universe. At this time, we recognize the ills that have befallen our First Nation brothers and sisters as a result of colonization, and commit to a walk of both reconciliation and repair. Okay, you can need to get up. Just.
Oh. I thought I got lost there.
So just quickly, brain spotting traditional practices. I feel that brain spotting holds a special place for both Western and First Nation healing practices, because both are rooted within both have neuro experiential underpinnings. And brain spotting melds very well with traditional practices, where there's that interrelationship between body, mind, heart, and spirit. And those remain paramount not only to existence, but very important to healing and to growth. I want to go to the ceremony slide. We lost the slide.
Oh, that's okay. That's good then.
So what Ovide is going to do a ceremony for us.
Yeah, so opening ceremony is a lot of times when we start, we always have a fire. There's always earth, water, and of course air is represented through the smoke. That's how we know that there's air. You know, we breathe it in, but most of the time it's if you want to have a visualization of air or oxygen. When we burn medicine, you can see the air from the smoke. So that's a really good visualization in terms of air being present. So that's a really good way to do that. And of course, there's always humor when we do ceremony, and that's our smoke signal. It's funny, but at the same time, it's serious. We always we always include humor in healing because there's so much despair and there's so much healing that needs to happen, and that's really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing one song, and I'm going to ask our higher power to come and watch us, and I'm going to ask him to sit with us, and and whoever our helpers are to come and sit with us, and it's really important. So I'm going to open that prayer. So when I sing a song, I'm actually offering a prayer, and when in that prayer, I'm going to ask, I believe that my spiritual helpers and my higher power is going to come and sit with me, and he's going to sit and have counsel with me, and we'll give messages from that counsel. So the what I use is a rattle, and how this that noise was the first noise in all of the universe when Creator was making all the things that are earth, water, fire, air, all those things. That's the silk noise, and the drum is our heartbeat. When we were in our mother's wombs, we that's one of the first audible things that our brain heard was our mother's heartbeat, and that's the most significant thing as our brain develops and starts the learning process inside our mother's womb. And I asked Creator to come and help listen and for us to connect, and there was a lot of connections, and it's really important, and for us to as how things develop in our brain and our synapses, and how we're able to do that. And in that way, when we talk about the traditional way, it's very much about connections. And I'll speak to a couple of things as we go along, and there's some pretty old stuff that I carry, and yeah, that's good. And I did a ceremony with the pipe the other day, and we'll keep moving forward. So that is the opening song, and that's the prayer, and that's asking our to whoever that higher power is for us to get guided. And if it's just us being, not necessarily knowing higher power, or just wondering, it's good to have that. So anyway, I don't want to start going on. I will if you'll let me. We'll be sitting here all night.
Thank you, Ovide.
You're welcome.
It's important to know that with First Nation communities, it is built on a very strong oral tradition. And I find it interesting when, in our Western society, the idea of standing up in front of class, giving speeches, offering workshops, it can be quite anxiety provoking. And if you want to see some amazing orators, you just pull from the First Nation communities, from the children up. It's just part of their soul of being able to stand up and share. So as we move forward, what I'm going to ask, because this is going to relate to attunement, and I'll talk about attunement in the frame later, but to have a sense when you go up north and you're working with people of Indigenous backgrounds, or those who grew up in the city, narratives and storytelling is very critical to knowing their essence. And Ovide and I met this morning to talk about our presentation, and I was sharing with Ovide that all my years of working with First Nation, and now that Allison too has joined in, they are some of the most genuine people. They are just genuine. So, Ovide, I think to open up people's hearts and to begin to support attunement with Indigenous peoples, if you could take some time just to share on yourself, if you wish, in storytell. And the nice thing about tradition is that what Ovide and I talked about this morning may not be what he's going to talk about now, based on the helpers that have come to him today, or visions, or voices he has heard between
Mm.
this morning and now. So Ovid, I'll leave it up to you to share.
So one of the most important things about healing is our the connections. The Dell talks about attunement, and I believe I'll start with the eagle fan. So I had a different eagle fan that I used, and I used it. I used to, when I was in ceremony in Sweat Lodge, I would pass it around, and people would use that as a microphone to speak and to give them courage to, dig deep and to talk about different things. And I'm going to set the tone with this eagle fan that I received 7 years ago, and I had another one. It's really worn out. I very rarely take this one out because it's really special to me, because this particular eagle fan, and I'm using it to hold so that I speak, Idini Mun is my language, and it's translated in English to Cree. Idini Mun talks about the four winds. I speak from the four winds. That's what Cree means. I speak from the four winds. And so when I use medicine, when I hold the eagle fan, especially this eagle fan in particular, that was gifted to me 7 years ago. So this eagle fan came from Poplar River First Nations, and this came before contact, about maybe 250 years ago. This came from that reserve, from a ceremony person that was there, that passed it down to his son, and that son passed it down. And as contact became more and more, and people were, either going into hiding with ceremony, or the priests were taking the ceremonial stuff and burning them or throwing them away. What happened is this particular fan was put away, and it stayed put away for about 150 years. And then this young man, the generations after that, this young man seen my eagle fan that I had. It was just it looked like more like a stick than anything. It wasn't an eagle fan. So he said, "I have something for you," he says. "I want to give it to you because I've been watching you. I've been watching you do your ceremony. I've been watching you. You're a really humble man, and you really care about what you do. You care about your practice, my practice of taking care of all the things that I receive, making sure that all the things are in the most sacred manner possible." And then he gave me this, and he said, "I want to present this to you." And it's been in my closet for 50 years. And he gave it to me, and I said, "Wait, I'll give you tobacco," I said, so I can have it. And this comes from a very powerful ceremony place in my family. And my family has let go of our traditional ways, and they're following the church. And I don't want to, he says, I don't want it to get thrown away or not be put to use, because I remember my great-great-grandfather, and he would have wanted this to be used in a good way. So he presented that to me, and so of course I sat with it for a long time. I even fasted with it. And when I fasted with that fan, it helped with practice, the practice of doing ceremony, the practice of these different things that I carry, these bones. This is called a fish needle, and that protects me when I do ceremony. And that's a really important bone that we get from the animals. and it helps with direction and path and focus and strength. So and I believe that bone gives me that, because I know how to harvest it, I know where it comes from, and I know which animal it comes from. So it's really, really important to me. And I believe that that's what that gives me in terms of healing and understanding of what direction I'm going. And all the things that I carry, it was really important. And I'd spoken about my pipe. I was going to bring my bear pipe, but this one came because it's a community one. This particular pipe, this one pipe I carry, is a community pipe. That pipe, I had asked about 35, maybe 40 years ago. I had asked, where does life come from? And then I had asked other elders and other people as to, where does life come from? And they said, go fast. Here, what does that mean? So go sit in the bush and go and ask, where does life come from? so I went and sat in the forest, and for the longest time, nothing. I sat for 7 years straight, but I was persistent. Because I wanted to see. I wanted to have a vision. And then this one day, I started getting a vision. And it was just what it was is, and we all see it. My vision was everybody else gets to see it, and it's a sunrise. It's just a sunrise. That's all I seen was in my vision was the sunrise, and for me that's fire, that star, and it also represents the star people, where we come from. So the stars are really, really important, and that star rose was my vision. So I went ahead and I started to understand, what does that fire mean to me? What does it mean? What does it represent? So it represents men, it represents fire, it represents those different kind of things that we need for warmth, cooking, and practical things. But at the same time, it's a doorway, it's a portal, it's a really important aspect of our spirituality. That fire that comes. So that first year was sunrise. The second year, it was I seen what was it? Okay, yeah, sunrise, and in that sunrise, it was funny because in my vision, in my dream, as I was dreaming, uh, uh, um, and it was a man, and but later on, because I learned to recognize how Jesus is depicted. That's who I seen was Jesus standing there, and I said, Jesus, what are you doing in my vision? I said, this is supposed to be my traditional vision. I said, it was funny to me anyway. It was very interesting. And later on, I'll but so the next year after that, because I still kept on asking, where does life come from? So the sunrise, Jesus, and then Jesus turned into a really old eagle. And that eagle looked at me, looked into my eyes, looked into my heart, and he showed me every single thing I ever done in my life, every single experience I've ever had in my life. Showed me about every mistake I've made, every little thing I've ever done in my life, every dark area in my life. He showed me, and he said, these are the things that you need to take care of, address, or comment on, or speak to. So I went ahead and I did that. I bought a bunch of cigarettes and $5 elastic band, and I filled up this bag, and as I traveled around, and as I remember meeting people, and as I remember causing any kind of harm to them, I would say, hey, listen, I said, hey, I have a gift for you. Here's some tobacco, and I want to apologize. I want to say sorry for causing you harm, even if it's with my words or however harm I caused you. I apologize. Some people accepted it. Some people said, I don't even remember what you're talking about. And some people didn't want nothing to do with me. But as long as I acknowledged it, that was the most important thing. So again, I went to my fast, and I was able to the instructions that were given to me. And then that fourth year, that again, it was the sunrise, Jesus, eagle. And then that fourth year, that eagle, he looked at me, and then he accepted what I have done to take care of the things that he showed me. And he flew up into the air, and he left a small baby eagle. And that baby eagle was holding this pipe, the way it looks, the way it's carved, the way it is, and he's holding it. And then that baby eagle, they offered me the pipe, and I caught it. And this is where life comes from. And that rock is represented by women. That tree is a representation of men. And when we put the tree and the rock together, life happens. That's the way that pipe is told. And then and it's connected to the white buffalo calf woman. It's connected to that lady that comes in the third night when you're fasting. It's connected to the fire. It's connected to the water. It's connected to the earth. And all the things that we have are a representation of our practice. We all have a practice. We all follow a practice, and we all reinforce our practices that we do in terms of how we make connections, how we attune to others, how we're able to help heal, the healing process. And that healing process is done through those first sounds that were made in the universe, that first noise we've heard in the womb, and all the connections that we have as we travel with our practice, that earth, that beautiful earth, that life-giving water, and that fire, and the air is really important. And whenever we have any kind of thing in my practice, whenever something comes up, that's the first thing I do is I'll fast. I'll sacrifice myself, and I'll ask that question. Either the first time it was, where does life come from? And then as I grow in my practice, and as I grow in my attunement, and as I grow in my spirituality, and as I grow in my wisdom, and the things that I carry, and the things that I consider when I give advice, or when somebody comes with tobacco, or when somebody asks for something, like for that, licorice is the most powerful what do they call it, when we help people with addictions. They chew on that, and that takes that. I don't know why that particular medicine takes away the craving of addictions. And we have to believe. And some of my hardest moments in life is gotta believe. That's the most important thing. If we believe that this thing will help somebody with their addictions, we tell them that story of that you set it up, you set up the thing, and you help them believe, right? Because of fire, because of medicine, because of water, because of earth, and the connection to the medicine is really important. And whenever we have anything to do with if I'm stuck, or if I don't know, I'll one of the things I'll do is I'll sweat with about 4, maybe 5 elders, and we'll have a discussion as to, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? And then a lot of times, it's very hard, or it's very easy, especially when you're helping people, and if we don't know answers, then sometimes we make things up. I've seen that happen lots of times, and I say, why did you tell that guy that? They said, we should always stick to our practice. You know what I mean? What we do as our practice, what's real. Earth is real, water is real, fire is real, air is real. So that's really important. And from that practicality, that when we're real, when we're authentic, and we're able to help people, and that's the most important thing to remember in our practice that we do. And all the things that we see here, I mean, our ceremonial, how we set up our ceremonies is a testament of some of the knowledge that we carry, some of the stuff that we follow through with, why we use turtles, why there's the rattles are the way they are made, why they're that way, why there's a buffalo, all those different kind of things like that, all those practices that we have, really important, because when we start to help people start doing their trauma work and start doing their it's really important to find their story, because I always say when we're sitting there in the sweat lodge, and when I tell people, as Indigenous people, we're all healers. We all have that potential to make things real and happen, and because it is you that comes with your tobacco and asks that question. If it wasn't for you with your tobacco, we wouldn't have this. This would be a mystery. This would be, So I accepted that tobacco, and I said, okay, I'll talk about how this works for me, how this helps me as a person that's come from a lot of trauma, that's come from believing something in my mind that I am not good enough to have something. I'm not good enough to belong somewhere. I'm not good enough to be loved. I'm not good enough to be heard. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's what I planted that myself. And because of bullying, because of violence, because of all kinds of things that are, that are really traumatic. Even the church. One of my most traumatic things that ever happened to me was with nuns. It was really hard. It was really hard. And when I walk through that, when I'm able to be present, it's the most important thing, because I honor that. I honor that little boy. I honor myself, and I honor that connection that I have with that little boy. That little boy that started telling himself, "You're no good. you're not good enough, and I gave up on him, and I started to walk a different path, and I left him behind. And it took me a long time to go back and say, hey, are you okay? It's me. You can trust me. I'll help you. I'm strong enough now. I think we can do this gently. Walk with me. Trust me. I'll help you. We'll help each other. And to acknowledge that part is really important. And with all of that, if I didn't have a pipe, if I didn't have that fire, if I didn't have that water, if I didn't have that earth, because lots of things can happen in our life when we when I lost my parents, I lost my brother, I lost my grandparents on both sides, I lost uncles and aunties, and it just kept on going and going and going because of alcohol and drugs, violence and whatever, and chronic illnesses like diabetes, cancer, and strokes, heart disease, all kinds of different things from not eating our traditional diet, not doing what we're supposed to do, what's on the earth, the water, earth, fire, the air, all those different things that are just right there, right in front of us, and we just got to do it. But it's so easy though to go to McDonald's or Tim Hortons, in Canada, Tim Hortons, Starbucks for the United States, but it's really hard. But at the same time, as I traveled, because that's one of the things that I do is I travel and I go listen to what other Indigenous people are saying. I go listen to their elders, what they talk about. I go listen, and they're all the same, some kind of organized religion, some kind of, they're taking the water rights and they're using them to take the land. And then, all the Indigenous people are saying, oh yeah, come on, we don't own it. We just take care of it. But when when we have that, this is gold. This is beyond treasure. Because if we deplete that, we won't have nowhere to live. If we deplete this, we can't drink. That life will cease. If we disrespect the fire, it'll cause harm. And if we pollute our air, and how we know is, it becomes visible to us. And that's the most important thing. And as we move forward, with different things, how we attune to earth, water, fire, and air is really powerful, because we don't even have to think about it. It just happens, and that's the road to spirituality. My belief is I help people understand or see how easy it is to connect with the earth, how easy it is to acknowledge that so much percentage of our body is water. It's how easy it is to, how that fire in ourselves and in our heart is really important. And to have that, to be able to say that we are, I did a study. I read this study this one time that the only difference as human beings is pigment. It's just a very slight. It's a chromosome. other than that, we're all the same, except for there's a little bit difference in the teeth and earlobes. Other than that, we're exactly the same. Even the animals, they have the same, you know, when we as men, one of the first things that we learn is anatomy. When we kill a moose and we take it apart, when we show the young people the heart, the lungs, the liver, the intestines, everything is the same inside of you. So you take care of it. You take care of this. And how you take care of that? Earth, water, fire, and air. It's really important. That's how you take care of that. And if you're able to maintain and have a balance, it's really important. And one of the most important things, or one of the, for me, as I compare, as I see two-eyed seeing, I did this before, and it took me a long time to really see it. But if you make two circles and you put them together, it turns into one, and it blends really beautifully. Because not only are we so close in comparison as all humans, there is no difference as human beings, but you know, the only difference is how we believe and what we believe and what we say, you know. And I live in a not so great neighborhood, but I always in the summertime I feed people. I share my abundance. I share my, you know, whoever wants to listen to me, I'll share it. You know, I have a fire outside, and I have a fire, you know, every Wednesday. This is I'll teach, I'll give to all that want to learn and understand. Is if you have a fire on Wednesdays before the sun goes down, and you sit there and you can talk to your ancestors. And when we talk to our ancestors, we have a little bit of tea, have a nice little fire with some ash. You pour a little bit of tea, and you can say anything you want to people that have gone on. And that's a doorway. That's a doorway for conversations. Because every time we have a fire, or when we light a sacred fire, because this is my sacred fire, every time we have a fire, my belief, the way I understand how I've been taught is up. When I lit that fire, there's another fire that was lit up there. All of our ancestors are talking. All of our ancestors are communicating, because we're all in a big circle, and they're all giving us messages. They're all talking about us. They're all saying, you know, different kind of things, and they're laughing just like us. We're learning from one another, and we're understanding each other. And before I turn it over back to Dell, I'm going to share one more song, and then we'll see how it progresses. Do I have time for a song, Dell?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so I'm going to share a song, and it's called here we go. So that talks about being shy to come in. And that's how some of our ancestors and our grandfather. Oh, who's that? That's my granddaughter. She's not shy. Our ancestors of all of us that are connected right now, we're tuning to each other. Some of them are shy. Some of them are, some of them, yeah, some of them are shy. And one of the things that came when I first sang that first song, and they wanted me to talk about this one part, is really important, and it goes to brain spotting, attunement, and human beings in general. One of my teachers, his name is John Stonechild, and he was instrumental in my life, and he just to have a little backstory. John Stonechild was studying to be he was a priest, and he was studying to be a priest, and he was going to go into priesthood. But he liked drinking too much, you know what I mean? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Winnipeg, but he lived on the north end, just a little bit north of Redwood. And there's a church there, and there's a big giant picture of Jesus on the wall. And he had an apartment across the street. And every time he drank, he'd have a really bad hangover and open his eyes, and there's Jesus looking at him. That's what he told me in his story. It was funny. But he had another plan for me, he said. And when the community gave me a pipe, and they said, "You're a very spiritual man, and this is who we are as spiritual people." And they started, so that's just kind of like a foundation of John and his spirituality. And so later on in life, he had 4 open heart surgeries. During one of those 4 open heart surgeries, he died for about 5 minutes. And his spirit guide, and this is his story, and he's telling me, and I asked him if I could share it with people in my life. He said, "Yes, of course." He said, "Share it, because I want everybody to know," he says. And so he died on an operating table on one of his open heart surgeries. And his spirit guide come and got him, and they were walking. And there was a river, sometimes they call it the river of life, but there was a river. And there was people crossing that river as they were walking. And the spirit guide was telling him different things. There's people in the water, ankle deep, knee deep, hip deep, shoulder, neck, under, and above their head. Some of them are underwater, trying to cross this river, or crossing this river. And some of them were really having a hard time crossing. And John asked spirit guide, "Why are some of those people in different levels in that water? And why are some people underwater?" He said, "Sometimes we don't let go. Sometimes we hang on to things in our physical life. So when we're going on to the river, when we cross that river of life, we carry it with us, and it sinks us. We have a hard time because we physically don't let go." So they went ahead, and as they went up a little hill, and you're on top of the hill, they're looking around, and there is churches, there is synagogues, there's all kinds of whatever religious belief that as human beings that we have, sun dances, sweat lodges, all over, and all of the people. We're going in and out, and going, checking, looking, experiencing, having fun, living life, no fear, no, our mind blocking us from our, as I would say, my ignorance, if I caused fear to happen for something. My phone might die, so I gotta plug her in. Hang on 1 second. 1 second, I'll be right back. My phone's telling me it's gonna die. Jeez. Enjoy that. Yeah. Maybe. Is she in there? Sorry. My granddaughter got in here. Okay. Hopefully that saves me.
Yeah.
He said, why are all these people not afraid of, the sweat lodge, and, and that spirit helper said to him, it's a man-made belief that, I move my stick. People make other people believe that things are bad, things are not good. People, when we think about that fire that happened in BC, British Columbia is mostly cedar. And I asked a bunch of elders, my teachers, so what do you think about this fire in BC? I said, hey, well, in BC there's cedar, eh? Mother Earth is sick. She's having a good smudge. That's what I believe that, so there's a correction that's really important. And so that's what that spirit guide told John. It's people. There's nothing wrong with what we have as a practice. Like we all have a practice. And that's the most important thing. And when people come asking for help, wanting to come into ceremony, wanting to be a part of something, belong, I'm very gentle and I'm very authentic. And that seems to help lots of people open up and be willing to talk about themselves in a good way. Yep.
Okay, Ovid?
Yep.
Thank you. And thank you, Ovid, for sharing your knowledge.
And I apologize about my granddaughter. She's
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah, you go ahead. And weaving in personal stories.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up, and I'm going to kind of warp speed through some information for you, because I think it's important that I review that. And then we're gonna talk about some actual First Nation frames that I've developed that take into consideration First Nation culture and perspective. So as I set up, if people can just take a breath and whatever you can reflect on, what really struck you with Ovid sharing, just spend a minute with that. Here, where? Okay. Okay, so this is way back. Need to go here. No. So this is actually the wrong slide. Okay. And I spent time fixing up my slides yesterday and I brought up the wrong slideshow. That's what it is. Don't you love it? So just quickly, healing itself is a universal requirement, and it is rooted in survival. And simply stated, it's about the body and the phenomena of the body and the environment and how the two mix together. But to remember, healing is not something that is just happens within an acute episode. It happens over time and throughout the ages and stages of life. So if we look at, I just want to do a little bit of comparison between Western and traditional approaches. Yeah. So you know what? Hang on a minute. Let's do this. People can, yeah, I'm just gonna bring this down and bring up the right one. Hang on a minute. Oh. Okay, so I want to move out of this one. This is not the right one. This is it here. The one I just brought up. Yeah. Okay. So if we look at a comparison between Western and traditional approaches, go ahead. With Western approach, the individual is paramount. And we see that for example, in my association as a psychologist, we look at the ethical guidelines, and with the code of ethics, number 1 is the individual, and 5th is the community. In the traditional approach, is the creator of the earth and the community, and all relationships within that remain most relevant. With Western approach, they look at reductionism, focuses on specific components of the person, the heart, the liver, the eyes, the mood, the brain. With traditional approach, it remains on all 4 aspects of us and the relationship between them. In the Western approach, we look at scientific methodologies, and those, by their own right, bestow credibility, and they determine what is truth. But traditionally, truth exists within the universe, and we are to observe, discover, learn, and honor and respect what is. Western, you have to know why it works for it to work. Traditionally, you do not need to know why it works to know that it does work. Allopathic medicine is the practice of medicine. Traditional approach is holistic and application in natural form. Western, focused thinking, linear and analytic. Traditional, circular. And as you could hear with Ovid's talk, and sometimes it's very hard to follow traditional. And I remember when I went to St. Teresa Point, and Hazel Harper, bless her heart, sent me in to meet with an elder, a knowledge keeper, much like Ovid. And the person was talking and talking and talking. And I'm being linear and analytic, and I kept interrupting and interrupting. And the poor fellow, he just kind of rolled his eyes and was patient with me. But when I went back to talk to Hazel, I guess word got back pretty quick. And she says, you didn't really kind of understand the context, did you? And I said, what? You were just to listen and to be patient and to cherish with what they're saying, because it's not linear, it's circular. In Western, the therapist has authority and is the expert. Traditional surround humility and obedience, and that is offered to the creator and to creation itself. All forces of nature are to be respected and honored, which is very different than in our post-modernity society where, and this is where colonization comes from, nothing has value before I saw it, and only I give it value. And the value I give it is what it gives back based on what I want from it. That is post-modernity and colonization. When people came to the Americas, everybody was savage and heathens. There was no value, and they made the value. Knowledge is owned, and this is really critical. Now, as I say this, recognize that I come from a practitioner scientific model as a psychologist. I've done research, I've had publications, and I very much appreciate Western science. It certainly has fixed my shoulders when I needed it, and certainly can help me with my mood. But in Western approach, knowledge is owned, and those that own the knowledge are believed to have made it and or have copyrighted it. And for what one makes, what I make, truth is created. Traditionally, knowledge is no one's property. It's to be held, preserved, honored, and shared for the good of all. As Ovid said, with two-eyed seeing, this concept is decades old and comes from an elder named Albert Marshall and his wife. They are Mi'kmaq, and they live on the east coast of Canada. And two-eyed seeing is learning to see from one eye with the strengths that one approach in knowledge offers, their way of knowing, and from the other eye, the strengths of the knowledge from another way of knowing. And it's learning to use both eyes together for the benefit of all. A two-eyed seeing methodology centers Indigenous pedagogy alongside Western therapies, and it draws on the strength of both worldviews for further integration, but here is critical, of holistic approaches of healing for the good of all. So if we look at traditional healing and brain spotting, is there an overlap? Is there intersectionality? Well, there is. And I remember I did a bad thing, Elsa and I. We did phase one with Pi, which was organized by Jane and Marge and Jean in Ottawa. And we were, I guess, not patient. And we jumped to phase three. We didn't do two. We were bad. But in going to phase three, I was introduced to Dr. Grand. And when I saw David sitting and doing his magic, and David is a true healer. He is just gifted. I went to him after, much like a very excited 8-year-old in the candy store. I look back, it's rather embarrassing, and it probably embarrassed him. bless his heart. But I said, David, this fits traditional healing practices. And I shared with him my thoughts on it. And David, being humble as he is, he knew that. He probably had figured it out long ago. But where tradition and brain spotting, I think, come together very well, is that it focuses on the whole person. It honors the complexity of humanity. You accept, do not get in the way of what is. Be the tail of the comet. The comet has a brain. It has a core. It knows what it needs to do, and intuitively so, when it's allowed to. And through promoting openness to oneself and to outside forces, we're free to attune to our inner voice, or the voice of a granddaughter right now. Our eyes are the connection to our whole being. Again, so we're in between traditional and brain spotting. I don't know, Ovide, if you know, but your sound is still on. We don't want to hear diaper changing. We also honor silence, respect, and patience. We trust the process, follow the individual's experience without judgment or assumptions. And then there's relational attunement, connectedness, and collaboration. In neurobiological attunement, much like Ovide was saying with the drum, the heartbeat, which is one of the first things we sense or hear in mom's womb. So when we look at treatment itself, preparing to offer treatment involves many factors, as this is not treatment 101, and recognizing most of you know the many factors. There's two that really stand out that are important when it comes to tradition and brain spotting, and that's attunement and establishing the frame. So I won't review points 1 and 2 for you because you know that, and it's well talked about in phases 1, 2, and 3. But the last one to me is really critical. Attunement may occur at various depths, and its strength is influenced by many factors. If we go to First Nation, and when you work with First Nation or BIPOC, these are my thoughts only. Attunement is most enhanced or deeply happens when, now people may not agree, where there's a connection to creation or the universe, to what exists. Whether you're spiritual or not, it's to be part of what is. You become close also through blood. And you see this where you're in a store, and this happens to people, and they're looking at somebody. And there's an attraction to them like I know them. And they find out they're a relative. Attunement through community, through lived experience, and with knowledge of history and ways of life. So you can see the importance with populations, BIPOC or none, how attunement folds in through various factors. The connection to what is through blood, community, lived experience, in knowledge of history and ways of life. It's of no surprise when you lose family members, moms and dads. And I have a friend who's well in her 80s now. Her mom and dad have passed. Her sister has passed. And she had no children. And her husband's passed. And she says, you know, Dell, what I feel so alone not because there's people there. It's not because I'm without people. Nobody's sharing my history anymore. I can't go to them and talk about my childhood and all the things that happened. Nobody shares that with me. And sharing and having knowledge of history and ways of life offers that. So what do we do if you're non-BIPOC? What do you do if you're non-Indigenous? Well, you still could be a darn good therapist with humility. But what can you do? And I say, when working with First Nation peoples, know the history and culture. You're not going to have the blood, and you're not going to have been raised on reserve in communities or in parts of Winnipeg or Calgary or Denver in New Mexico. Participate in traditional activities and ceremony. Be part of some of the lifestyle. Listen and be witness to the stories and lived experience of Indigenous peoples. Receive mentorship. Become an ally. You will not determine if you're an ally or not, and you do not define what allyship means. You will be invited. And your role, the parts you will play, will depend on the person inviting you in as an ally. And adopt a two-eyed seeing approach. So for attunement, that can occur with humility. And if you don't share what was on the previous slide, then these are some thoughts, some things that I would encourage you to do, not just with First Nation, but people who are not of your race or color or of your beliefs. The frame. I love the frame. I could riff on the frame for hours. But the frame helps to establish a neuro-experiential state that supports healing. And we experience frames throughout the day. The frame of getting out of bed, the frame of transition, the frame of landing at work, the frame of coming home, the frame of going to the gym, the frame of offering this talk tonight. Frames are a set of many experiences internally that come together that put you in a position to do what is required for you to do at the moment. So let's talk about some frames that I've developed. There's 8 in total. I'm only going to show 3 tonight, and I didn't pick any for any specific reason. But one is called the narrative frame. So as Ovide did, Ovide told a story. And stories represent a sacred transfer of information to others and has many purposes. But it does help to connect, integrate, and reconsolidate the past, present, and future. And, when people who use narrative therapy, that's about a collection of experiences and ideas and beliefs that come together to form kind of a pinnacle understanding of who we are and what guides us. And I find using the narrative frame with Indigenous people quite helpful at the beginning or at the end of one's healing journey. Because in the beginning, what I ask is for them to tell their story, whatever that is, at whatever time and place they are, to become more connected to or mindful of themselves, which is neurobiological attunement. And it also, as they tell their story, I love stories. It facilitates connection between myself and the individual, which is relational attunement. So what I do is I invite the person to choose the direction they wish to face. Now, direction is very important in First Nation culture because each direction represents a different time in life. The East is birth. The South is early development and growth, which is critical to skill development, identity development, and relationship with the community and the community's relationship with you. The West is more adulthood and the understanding of knowledge. And then North is folks like me who are lucky enough to live in the North, is older age. So I won't get into how we decide around direction, but direction is important in this frame. And then you invite the person just to tell their story. And you sit and you listen. The story may go the hour and they may continue when they come back. But as they tell their story, you'll get a sense of the essence. And you'll notice where their eyes settle on a certain spot as they tell it. And you check with them to see if they notice that spot. You invite them to notice what comes up in their mind, body, spirit, and heart. And those words are intentionally used. You do not do a suds. That's just kind of not part of the vernacular. And then you invite them to continue to tell their story from that connected place. They may choose to continue to share aloud or become silent, but either is honored. And you can check in periodically and allow the person to share in their processing for as long as they wish while remaining silent, because it is a narrative frame. You do not reframe, do not question or interpret. So as we know, you remain the tail of the comet. And again, I find this frame very helpful at the beginning of therapy and at the end, because you'll see at the end the forming of an integrated narrative, different from where they started. The resource frame. So you can see the diagram. There are 5 rings to consider. In First Nation traditions, health and wellness is multi-layered. There are 5 layers or rings. The center is the self. In all its purities and impurities, it is just simply you. The second ring is the medicine wheel. I'll come back to that. The third is the 7 sacred teachings. The fourth is community, and the fifth is culture, traditions, land, and economics. The self in the center makes sense because you are the most important person. But you think, why the medicine wheel is next? Well, because the medicine wheel forms all parts of the self. And then you may think, why the 7 sacred teachings? Why not the community? The 7 sacred teachings are not human. They're not body and blood and bone. Why would you not have your community? It's because the 7 sacred teachings is closest to the Creator. So the self and the 4 parts needs to be connected next to the Creator. And we are connected closest to the Creator when we have our feet on the ground. Community is important because they protect us. But the 7 sacred teachings were a gift from the Creator to keep things running well, to keep us in order, to guide us. So with that resource diagram, this is kind of front-end loading. You take as much time as required, and the client is supported in completing the resource diagram. Each layer one at a time, and they identify their resource within each of the areas. They may have a number, but they're supported in 1 or 2, and those are resourced. Each one is resourced separately. And then we also bring together them all. If you bring them all together, if you bring in together the teaching of the bear, of your kukum, of the Sundance, What comes up for you? What do you feel? Connect with that. And as we do this, you can use gaze spotting or inside window. So there is intentional resourcing. Once the resourcing is done, then you go to a traditional frame, which is the treatment session. You determine whatever issue, the SUDS, determine where in the body they feel the issue, and then the issue, of course, is placed aside. And then within the resource diagram, you have that present. You support the client to note where in the body, they most feel aspects of a particular layer and what they culturally identify with most. And that could be with the spirit animal, aspects of the earth teachings, beliefs, and values. And you identify how strong they feel this resource. And then you work to increase as needed. Again, we won't talk about it today. Determine the direction they feel best fits what they're noticing and have them sit facing the direction. You find the inside window brain spot that connects to the body resource. They're invited to bring the activation over, as in the resource set up on phase 1, and mindfully process. So again, where in phase 1, we use body resource, which is very effective. Not that it doesn't work for First Nation, but again, given where they are culturally and their beliefs around being part of a larger constellation, it's not all about them. And it's not uncommon when you're doing brain spotting that they'll say, I'm feeling my ancestors behind me. My aunties are behind me. So just respecting the culture is to bring in this resource frame through the multi-layers. The 7 grandfather teachings frame. This is a double spotter, and it can be used with most issues. The teachings or guiding principles serve to bring together a reconnection between self and an outside resource. So when you use this frame, in all these frames, you need to know the person's beliefs. You're not going to be using it with a Christian. Many First Nation are Christians. And this has happened through colonization. And very strong Christians. Others are traditional. Some actually bring the two together. So what you do is you get to know each individual and you decide with them, if you're going to go more with traditional frames or not. But with the grandfather's teaching, you need to spend time ensuring that the person knows the teachings. Usually when they're traditional, they know teachings based on their age and what has been offered to them. But as needed, you spend as much time as required to go over and discuss the teachings, and importantly, what each teaching might mean to them. Because that's a felt lived sense. So once the teachings are reviewed and the person has a strong understanding of them and a felt sense, then you can go to the frame, which is identify the issue, can go to SUDS, notice where in the body it is, determine the direction, locate the activation spot for the identified issue using inside window. Okay? And then you mark the spot. As the person thinks about the issue, you have them consider the 7 teachings. And they will, through their Rolodex, determine which one feels most connected to their issue. And you find an inside window brain spot for that. And just allow time for some brief processing of the teaching. Now, with double spotting, you usually work off the resource spot. But I find in working with First Nation, they seem to be okay deciding which spot they just want to work off. And they're asked, which spot would you like me to place to hold the pointer? And then that spot remains the anchor. Then they're invited to process off the to begin to process off the pointer and go between the two spots. So those are examples of 3 of the 8 setups, that frames that we've done. I also just want to share with you on our website, CPIMT, Canadian Prairie Institute for Midbrain Therapies, cpimt.ca. We have from Nolan, he is Métis and he's here in Winnipeg, Turin, and he kindly created and donated a track that has drumming and fiddling, First Nation music, rattles, and we've received very strong feedback in people's use of it. And it is free. Nolan donated it. So if we go back, while there are differences between Western and traditional, there is, as I've shared, much overlap between the two, with Western and traditional. And brain spotting, just based on how it works, I find blends very well. And setting up these frames and using them have also been very successful. And receive good feedback on it. So what I'd like to do before we open it up to questions, Ovide, could you just do a bit of a closing in terms of a ceremony? You're on mute, Ovide.
There you go.
Okay,
Can you hear me now?
I haven't
Oh. I don't know how that happened, but so
turned off.
it turned off. So the attunement, when we look for, we share Earth. We all have that attunement to Earth as to the relationship that we have. The attunement to like how we relate to water, air, fire, all those different things, and of course the stars. The stars are so important, and it always helps because we share that. When we look up into the sky, we can talk about that. We share it as human beings. We share that. So I just wanted to, and the framing and the teachings are really important. So in terms of, so I'm closing the ceremonial part. That's what. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, if you could, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, so.
Well, Elvin, I should let you know, I don't know if you've got, what's it called? A sound cancellation on your phone, because as you're drumming, it starts to cut out, and it's unfortunate because we do hear some, but not all. So you may have noise cancellation, just so you know.
We use a rattle. And so this last song, and it's appropriate to use this rattle, This is the four level, 4-dimensional rattle, they call this, because there's four levels of spirituality. And I'm going to close this part of our brain spotting teachings. And all that we have to offer is, all you have to do is bring your tobacco and ask a question. So that's the most important part, right? So I'll close it with a song that was given to this group of ceremony people that was really it was a good gift. It was a beautiful gift by one of our most traditional leaders that a lot of people follow. And in Ascomun and Matsun that tapos tamanista agimi de gusia tumaginaw inani gutitionist na manto sinukta inani gutitionist na musumananak nukumananak kaya kadanyok pawagan nanak gutitionist na ni biggest quiz tamanis na Matsunan Ikiusquista manis na tawitsi haya cognis na negutisia pagamiskayo sa gusto uma naguhtatsi tamamitunista magutisi gusto iti maganaw na negutisia ni kapuit tama gimidigusia medok matsun Pasigo iganistan timitogatama agi midianistan Kosta magapatsikta meduma nimambituli chiganana Kami dapat cerita egotis nistan tapi uskista manistan medok matsun. Stidi mon na nagatawi mo. Skinoftahin egotis. That's it.
Thank you, Ovid. Mitch, you can put on the lights and bring people back into the here, we'll do this. Good.
People want to put their video on, that'd be great.
Mhm.
And then you can enter gallery view if you want to see everybody. That's your choice.
Yes. So again, thank you for allowing us to share probably a very different experience. So I'm going to leave it open if for any thoughts or comments or questions. People are more than welcome to share. Hey, Tracy, nice to see you.
Hey, Dell, the pleasure is all mine. This was refreshing today. Hey, Knowledge Keeper,
Hello there.
thank you for your authenticity of self, brother. It was refreshing for me. Wow. You know, your embodiment is simply beautiful, Knowledge Keeper. You started off talking about healing from an Indigenous perspective. I didn't hear you as much as I felt you and how you resonated with my soul as a Black-bodied Indigenous sister.
Hey,
You you said something early on, and I was in the car racing to get home. And you talked about healing and you put it in such a beautiful context when you spoke about the ancestors and how they're all sitting in a circle together. You took me back to Chichen Itza in Mexico. So I went to visit the pyramids and I saw hieroglyphic on a wall etched in stone. And I saw what looked like a native indigenous person of Mexican descent. And right next to that indigenous Latin person, I saw what was clearly an African etched on that wall in hieroglyphics. And when you spoke and honored the ancestors, that was a blessing to me because you bear witness that we all belong and none of us got here of our own accord.
Mm.
And so you came with the embodiment of creating the conditions for healing, which is so in alignment with Brain Spotting's dual attunement frame, whereby David, my lovely Boogaloo mentor and friend, always says, err on the side of relationship. And you so beautifully demonstrated, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be present with you, with your ancestors, my ancestors, and the authenticity of yourself, because that is the first component of the dual attunement frame, because you shared and demonstrated embodiment. So I want to thank you for that, knowledge keeper. I honor you.
Thank
I'm
you.
listening.
So go ahead, Ovid.
No. I was just saying, I'm listening and I hear you. I hear you. Honor it, Tim. Go ahead.
I'm wondering if Glenda wouldn't mind commenting. You put something in the chat, Glenda, about how this resonates with your experience in the Andes. We'd love to hear more about that if you're okay to share.
Yes.
Hi, Glenda. I hope it's okay. I just
Okay, I wasn't prepared, so I am a little shy. It's like,
you're on the hot seat. Sorry.
but thank you. I really enjoy this this circle of learning. So thank you for that. And it resonated with me so much with what I do without even thinking about it, right? I was thinking, you know, how we need to verbalize and how a lot of times when we ask people here to you know, to just pay attention to what comes up and stay quiet for a bit, sometimes that makes no sense because everybody needs a witness to their narrative, right? And we need to be heard by the other in a very strong way, in the sense that we are together with the other, right? And in the sense that we share the experience and we have what we call here in Quechua, the ayu, which means the community, the family, the group to hold us, right? That could be just, the therapist and the person that's working with you. And how I'm a mestizo woman, and I've been studying Indian medicine for about 1.5 years now. And I am very humbled by the sensibility of the medicine in the Andes, right? And by the original people from here. And what you were sharing and the ritual for the beginning and everything that both of you have shared, just, like I'm shivering, because what I see is that we are a whole human family, right? That all of us resonate more or less, that all of us might have stories of how we also need to come together, and somehow we have forgotten to do that because we all go to the neocortex, right? But thank you for that. Like it really reminded me of that sense of being together through the attunement to one another and to ourselves, and also to the world that we live in, and to the creator, right? So thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
One of the most important parts of when I do ceremony, when I light that fire, there's a medicine that we use. It's called grandfather medicine, Wike, and bear root, and those three combined when we start our fire, it magnifies our calling, whatever that calling is. And I mean that when we ask for things and when we ask for help, and a lot of times it's it's and I see so many amazing, beautiful things happen with people with anxiety disorder, with claustrophobia, with being around a group, people with anxieties, with stuff like that, and they come together, and when you use that medicine, it just kind of just all those things seem to fall away as that fire burns, and they crawl into a really closed space. And I often ask them, I said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I feel really good," because of the way I'm able to create that theater, that space for people to feel safe and to feel like they're in control of their own healing and their own destiny. And that's really important when we start to attune and we start to create those framings when we do ceremony. When we start the drums, when we start the rattles and the singing, very powerful, because it just opens up blood memory. And when we open up blood memory, we can start to dig deep inside of us, our ancestors. That's really important. And again, the stars, it's just so much teachings. It's just unbelievable.
Diane?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this wonderful teaching and for the music and the song. I wanted to ask, you mentioned using the 7 grandfathers teaching frame, and mentioned asking our client where their activation might connect with the 7 teachings. If you could share a little bit more about that and how to present it and discuss it with our clients. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your question. What I'm hoping for, Diane, is that, when they talk about their issue and they're aware of what's going on inside of them, that then they reflect on the teachings. And again, there's been work done prior to go over the teachings with them. And in doing that, as I indicated, for them to have a sense of experience with it, that they can feel it alive inside of them, that it's tied to a lived experience. So when they have that activation, I trust in where the body's going to take them. And I just will say, you know, you be aware of what you're experiencing right now with that issue and in your body and what it's like. And just think of the 7 teachings. And let's see which one connects.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And just to add to that, one of the most important things is to really understand, because a lot of times we have to do a little bit of digging before we can understand which animal they're actually connecting with. And it's sometimes it's tricky as to where that is and where that's coming from. It's really important.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Andrew, nice to see you.
Hi, Dell. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Thank you, and Ovide, for everything that you shared with us tonight. It made me think, I've been thinking about this concept of multicultural competence for clinicians and brain spotting, and just wondering if you've made some really interesting and beautiful adaptations of brain spotting, but are the basic principles of brain spotting the stance of uncertainty and humility, following in the tail of the comet, making no assumptions, attunement, are those enough to give you a kind of basic level of multicultural competence, or do you think there's more refinements that are needed? Generally, it's just a pretty broad question, but curious what you think.
If you don't mind, Andrew, if I can throw that out to Ovide,
Yeah.
Glenda, and Tracy, and even Regina to comment on, because that's a really good question. And I think there's more refinement to it, but I kind of live more of a white life per se, because my mom was a Jew, my dad was Native. My mom found out she was a Jew when grandma was dying and told her, Marg, you're a Jew, don't tell anybody, it'll destroy your life. And she died. So my mom kept it in for decades. And my dad, if people asked him who he was Canadian. So, I certainly feel Jewish and traditional, but I've also grown up so mainstream. So I think, to be fair to that question, I feel I am multicultural because being Native and I work with Natives, my second language is American Sign Language, which is another culture. But I gotta throw out, I just, if it's okay, not to put people on the spot, but, Ovide, Tracy, Glenda, Regina, even Michelle, or Joy, whoever, Glenda, whoever maybe has a thought on that, because you're right, there's so much anchored similarities, but does it create the attunement? And I'll leave it, if you go back to those 2 slides I gave on attunement, the one about, the true attunement would be being close to creation, blood, community, lived experience. And then if you're not of that race, what you could do but I'll leave it open. See what people think, but that's a really good question, Andrew. Thank you.
So one of the things that that cultural competence, again, I alluded to the fact that the most important thing to remember is that we're all human beings. You know, we're all the same, and it's just the differences that we have that we think that are different. And I also, when I shared my story with my teacher about dying and all of the things, it's a lot of times it's a mental concept. And again, that's just one aspect, right? A very small aspect about competence. And one of the most important, one of the harshest pills I've ever had to swallow was a person that says, I'm an ally, I'm a this, but they weren't authentic. They were just using that as a thing to, you know, to get something. When we become like, I worked for an organization for 13 years, and I worked closely with RCMP, police, and criminal justice organizations. And for the most part, a lot of people were really authentic, and they really acknowledged the differences. You know what I mean? You know how sometimes somebody says, you know, you're a real cool guy for how do I address you? You know, and sometimes law enforcement are the best, you know, they just say it, you know. I'm a Cree warrior, I tell them. Right? Well, how do I become a warrior? They say, you are a warrior already. I just, you know, we just don't know. You forgot, or your people didn't teach it. We all carry those traits and those teachings and those different kind of things, protecting the water carriers, protecting our communities, protecting our, you know, we have that, and I want to make sure I say that innate protectionism as a human being, but as more as a man, as I carry that fire. We all have that, and we just have to be. And again, Dell talks about the authenticity, being authentic. And these guys, my grandfather helpers, the weasel, the beautiful thing about that animal is that it changes color as the seasons change. It adapts. The adaptation of these animals and what they teach is so beautiful, and it's just magic. That adaptability that they teach us, you know, that like a chameleon in some cultures, it blends in magically, and that's without any worry of anything. It just happens, and if we can, you know, learn that, then it's beautiful. Then the competence is built in us. It's there, and we just have to realize it. So as I go in, you know, as a man of I have dark skin. I'm sometimes referred to a very tall Mexican, you know, very dark. I forget what I was referred to this one time, but anyway, that's. I adapt, and that's a really awesome thing to have. And it's like, if you can learn to use it, then it becomes seamless, and it becomes something that people admire because people take notice a lot of times. People take notice if I wear different shoes, if I wear different clothes, if I take a different route. You know, sometimes why'd you drive that way? You know, people notice. So it's built in, and then all we have to do is learn how that works. And when we learn it, it's a freedom that we don't have to worry about it anymore because it'll be built in. And sometimes when we try to it's harder to see the differences as opposed to not worry about the differences. It's because it takes time and effort and work. And if we can seamlessly learn that, it's people notice, people will recognize it, they'll see it. Because from a person of of color, sometimes I think it takes lots of work sometimes to order coffee, or food, or because people there's already a preconceived notion of what might be as opposed to what is. So that's what I think about that. And these guys, wintertime, summertime, they just change color. And they blend in. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Ovid. Michelle?
I was thinking about your circles, Bill, in that you had self in the center and then you had the land out here. And I was having challenges with that within my own mind because I was seeing the land in that center circle with the self, in that our relationship with the land is very, very intimate, and the land is part of how the Creator speaks to us.
Yeah.
And so it is in our center. That's where the inner fire is. And then I was thinking about a song that I learned at the Anishinaabe Catholic Church in Chiging Reserve. And it was, "Oh great spirit, earth, wind, sky, and sea, you are inside and all around me." So it was doing that dualism. And anyways, it was just something that came up.
Well, and I think, and that's not those are not original to me. My understanding, and I hear you, Michelle, my understanding of it is that the culture and the land offer the wraparound, the holding of us. That's how I perceived it. But you're right. I mean, again, our connection to the land is our connection to everything. And I think how I saw it, in that creation of those circles, it was the holding basket. But yes, I hear you.
And I think about when relationship between humans fails or is disrupted, our relationship with the land is often safer.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shaman?
Just going back to that original question around multicultural competence and whether or not the skills of basic brain spotting are enough to be multicultural. And I would say yes and no. I think that as has been said already, that even if we listen to like Michelle and Dell and their different interpretations of the same values and the same understanding, is that as individuals, we are very different. and we interpret things differently and we understand things differently. So what I'm hearing is like, do we need to know the 7 teachings, and do we need to know this, and do we need to know that in order to be, culturally relevant or competent? And I think that the answer to that is no, because I, as an African, may have a very different practice than somebody else as an African. And knowing what the culture of my people do doesn't necessarily tell you what the culture of me is. And so I think that really goes back to some of the things that Ovide was saying as well around authenticity, being humans first, and how that competence is kind of built into us, but we must learn it. And I think that the part that we need to learn, and then there's 2, is cultural humility. So, that's about acknowledging our limits, acknowledging what we don't know about those other people and about ourselves and our own history and our own colonization. But then also acknowledging biases, assumptions, stereotypes. Like, I may have someone walk in and right away I think that I know something about their culture. And that leads to the next piece, which is cultural curiosity. We have to challenge, we have to be asking those questions. And Ovid spoke about that a bit when he talked about how these people were asking him questions. Why do you do it this way? Why do you do that? Even in terms of, oh, you took a different route. Why did you do that today? Right. And that's our job in terms of creating safety, is creating a space where culture can be expressed. I cannot say how many times I've had Indigenous folks come into my rooms and feel really silenced because they haven't been given a space where they can decide what their identity means to them or who they are. Instead, they've come into spaces and people have said, you're Indigenous, well, this is who you are and this is what you need, and here, do these things, right? And then it's made them kind of feel like, oh, maybe I'm not Indigenous enough, or Black enough, or Jewish enough, or whatever, right? And that's not the space we want to create in a therapeutic setting. We want to create a space that says, who you are is enough. Teach me who that is.
Thank you. Tracy?
Actually, Regina's hand just started working. So Regina, I saw your text and I was gonna ask you to give your comment before I shared. So please go ahead, Regina.
Oh, thank you, my friend Tracy. I was just, I was listening, my hand wasn't working, but that's a true, thinking from a cultural standpoint, that patience and being able to wait and to listen and be really, really present as we are today thus far in this training, and hear what our elders and our culture bearers want to share with us, and not expecting that it follow the typical linear process that we might be used to from a Western lens, right? And that if it's feels circular, just being present with it and seeing where it goes and how does this relate are really important. And there was something else that occurred to me just one of the things in just looking at Ovid's, background is, if you look at his little box there on the Zoom screen, everything is significant, and his sharing the significance of each of the things behind him and in front of him, in even modeling the significance of his granddaughter. All of it is what, when we're working with those who are Indigenous, that knowing that every piece is significant and somehow comes back and can connect with the strengths and resources of Indigenous culture is, kind of just a piece to really notice in what you're seeing and hearing today. I just, wanted to underline some of that as it's been modeled, but just to kind of to underline it. So for those who are less familiar might, pick up on some of those pieces. And when you're sitting with someone who is from a culture and you're wanting to be more culturally humble, really, really listen. And if the person offers something, then really take it in, as something for learning. Don't dismiss it or continue to, if it's something that the person is uncomfortable, continue to do the same thing because you don't really take it in. Like, it's really, really, and not expecting that person to be the one to teach you about the culture, but if teaching comes in the way of, being present with that person, being open to receiving that. Just some things that I would underline and hopefully are helpful to the group.
Thank you. Okay, Tracy, you were on, went off, came back. So we'll go to you, then Jean, and then Glenda. Go ahead, Tracy.
So, Dell, from the first I met you in a trainers meeting, I knew I liked you for some reason. I think you're starting to unfold as the lotus does for me. And through relationship, it's becoming more pronounced. I appreciate the position that you took because what you said in this space is that I have lived mainly as a dominant cultured man, which comes with a hell of a lot of privilege. And in your wisdom and your compassion and your respect for humanity, you deferred to marginalized folk that live in an indigenous way through a phenomenological experience, which is different. Be clear about that. There is no monolithic ideal around cultural competency. What's at stake here is intersectionality. Those social locations, those identities, and how they overlap, creating the holistic of humanity, whether it's the LGBT plus community, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's race, ethnicity, religion. The brother said being Jewish was a secret. Why? Because along with that identification comes marginalization of religion. Jewish and Muslim are both Semitic religions. They blow up the synagogue like they do the Black church. Where am I coming from here? David teaches us in phase 1 and phase 2, when we start talking about the window of tolerance and resource model. When you start dealing with situations that are verging on the window of tolerance, such as DID, severe attachment disruptions, especially with DID, I want y'all to start looking at cultural competence in the same realm. It is its own Swiss watch with this internal consistency that regulates itself. You cannot treat every person that shows up with a similar phenotype of what you think you see. That's problematic because now you're lending yourself into erasure. Now you're supporting Dr. Sue's research showing that oftentimes marginalized clients receive re-traumatization and trauma at our hands as clinicians, the supposedly expert. What am I saying here? Please learn about your own intersectionality, your locations, what that looks like for you, how they overlap, and what that means for you, because that's going to give you a foundation. Because bias is oftentimes unconscious. When we start talking about microaggression, macro assaults, and things of that nature, as Ovid was speaking about the commentary of the witnesses, I was mortified. In the States, those would serve macro aggressions because you're noticing me, you're noticing my way and my difference, and you think it's okay to create labor on me to teach you about me. That's problematic. Right in alignment with Regina is saying. We as clinicians, as helping professionals, if you don't know what intersectionality is, please look into it. If you are unfamiliar with your own social locations and what the dominant culture normative is, the opposite end of that is marginalization and subjugation.
Mhm.
Ask the questions. People would rather you ask than to make assumptions. The only oppression brain spotting has is what you bring to it. Brain spotting is a non-oppression, no assumption, inclusive model that can stand alone or be integrated beautifully. And so I just wanted to give that invitation that as clinicians, we sit with the world. We ought to know. So thank you, Dell, for that invitation. You know, I'm passionate about that whole topic.
I've never noticed your compassion, Tracy, never. Thank you. Jean, go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you both so much for this teaching. Part of me is feeling bad because I have tobacco, but I have no way to give it to you before I ask this question. I grew up on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and so I know about tobacco, but I have no idea what the 7 teachings are. And several times tonight I thought, oh, I can connect with the eagle feather. I know what that's about. I know about the heartbeat in the drum because I thought they were playing my heartbeat, but I guess it's the other way around. But then there are other things that it's different. The Dene are different. I mean, they're in 4 corners. They're not in Canada. And I guess I'm wondering, how do you oh geez, I'm not even sure what I'm asking, but you can't universalize First Nation people.
No.
And how do you translate
Mhm.
what you taught into now I live in Chicago, and there's so many different peoples here, and I
Yeah.
don't know how to translate these protocols into Ho-Chunk or
Yeah.
some other thing.
That's
Illini.
a really good, thank you for sharing. And what I should have said at the beginning, because you're right, there are different tribes. And the teachings that Ovid and I use come more from the Anishinaabe, Korean Anishinaabe. So if we look though across Canada with the Dene, the Inuit, the Métis, it varies. But with the other tribes, there is much similarity, but there's different teachings on the creation story, on the flood, on the use of the 4 directions. So there is a general frame with much commonality, but you're right. It's like languages. There's different languages, different dialects. So it's more, I think, as Tracy said, and I cannot repeat what Tracy said because it was much more eloquent than I could do, but it's kind of, you go in with humility, and Shaman was saying, and you kind of, you be your authentic self, and you're curious, and you see where things fit, where they don't, and it is a dance of collaboration. It really is. It's, like when you look at the 4 major factors of good attachment: care, curiosity, patience, and persistence. If you can bring those into your relationship with a big pound or kilogram of humility, and you're authentic,
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah,
happens.
that's I think that's one of the reasons I like brain spotting, is that I can communicate my gentle curiosity as I'm asking them to look inside themselves with compassion and curiosity, and I don't have to know, but I
Yeah.
do have this connection with powwow drums. I'm very grateful for those, the music, the bilateral music you gave us. So,
Yeah. Well, and what we'll find, Jean, is that within communities, people can grow up in a community and never learn about tradition. And some ways it's weaponized or demonized,
mhm,
right? So yeah, but thank you.
yeah,
Glenda,
thanks.
you get to be the last question.
So can I just
My
can I just
my boss, my real boss is going, time.
can I just comment
Go
on that
ahead.
lady? What's that lady's name that was just talking? What's her name?
Jean,
Jean. I want to
Yeah.
so it took me a couple of days to prepare for this, to what to bring. What came was this turquoise stone came.
Ah,
And this turquoise stone was given to my brother. He's passed. He's one of my ancestors now, by the Navajo elders. And he was told that he's already beyond this world. The Navajo elders, the Hopis, and there was a gathering of elders, and my brother just happened to be in that canyon. My brother's a long distance. He used to be a long distance runner, and he went to go run the Jim Thorpe's longest run from
wow.
Oklahoma to California. And
Yeah.
and he ran 28, 30 miles a day. And 27, I can't remember, but they gave him this rock, and
Wow.
this is for you, because a lot of times your elders, or where you come from, you know, they use these blue rocks for vision.
Oh yeah.
That's what
I'm never without some turquoise on my body.
yeah.
Thank
And
you.
that helps,
Thank you so much.
that helps you with your vision. And that's
Yeah,
what
it does.
that when they were talking to me, because that's one of my helpers is my brother, and he said, when that lady comes on, tell her, what's that? How did I say it? I didn't understand what he said, but in Navajo, it's like Cree, but they said, Kigistidem, we have your respect, your bloodline.
Thank you.
That's what they said, my brother, to him, your elders from 30 years ago.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, from that turquoise. You're the lady
Thank
I
you
was
so
waiting
much.
for to speak up.
Thank you. I'm very moved. Thank you.
Glenda.
If we don't have time, that's okay. Dell.
Yes, we do.
I just feel that I want to go and visit you all in Canada and just you know, have a meal with you for hours and hours and just talk. And but as you were talking now, and I think with the question that Andrew did, what came to my mind from the Andes and what I've been learning is that nothing by itself is whole, right? Nothing by itself is whole. Therefore, brain spotting is beautiful, it's wonderful, and the tools and the concepts are awesome. I love it. That's what I'm also a trainer, right? But it comes from the West, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. That's what I've also learned from my teachings, right? From my elders. And but when we're able to complement it as you have been doing, right, and this beautiful presentation that you gave to us, and you know, this sharing, with this sensibility, with this other understanding of the world that comes through the senses, that comes through the seeing with our eyes, that comes through the hearing with our ears, that comes through reading symbols rather than letters and words. It just makes it wholesome, right? Because it complements both, mind and heart, right? So I just wanted to thank you for that. So thank you very much from my heart and from my mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenda. So, Dr. Evans, I'll throw it back to you.
My heart is so full. Wow, this was beautiful. Thank you, Dell and Ovid. Thank you, everybody who's come. And it's kind of special. Lotus, Jane, and I were, and Marjorie were at the Psychotherapy Networker just on Sunday, and we saw David Grand. And David and I were remembering that it was 8 years ago on this weekend that I discovered brain spotting. And look how that little event, it's like that butterfly effect. Look what Canada is doing. We've got people from all over coming to work and learn and be with us and want to have dinner with us. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So I'm so thankful and so grateful to all of you. And Glenda, I love what you said about nothing on its own is whole. And look how much more we all are as we come together. Speaking of coming together, April the 17th, we have our next meeting, and we have two wonderful trainers, or no, they're not trainers, they're consultants in Europe, Alessia Bruno and Ruth Chiles, who are staying up to the wee hours of the morning to present on developmental trauma and performance inhibition. They're going to be talking about helping people to overcome hurdles and performance issues that may be related to whatever has happened in their past. Ruth Chiles has actually written a whole book about this. And I know this because a patient of mine came in with it and been working on it. She knows more about it than I do. So that's one event to look forward to. We have an AGM coming up in the middle of May, so you'll be getting information about that. And if you aren't already signed up for Robbie Abel's training on working with addictions and learning about all the things that aren't about setups, that's in person at the end of April in Ottawa. And Robbie is mostly retired now, so this is a one-off event, and it is in person. So we'd love to have you join us. Marjorie, are you here with us? Is there anything else you'd like to add there? Oh, we can't hear you, Marjorie, for some reason.
How about now?
Oh, so much better.
Okay. I seem to have two different mute buttons. I've been quieter than usual for fear of coughing at you. But this has been such a special night. Thank you so much, Dell, and especially Ovid, for joining us and bringing us, such richness and expansiveness. The power of the group and the community that we are felt to me as if it was kind of getting stronger and stronger and stronger as the evening went by. And I think that's a real blessing to all of us. And we thank you for that gift. I think that it's amazing and wonderful that so many of you have probably stayed up past your bedtime and stayed for this lovely conversation. And thank you so much to everybody for your contributions, whether they were vocalized or not. And on that note, I think we need to say good night.
Good night.
Have a lovely week, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Hopefully
Good
we'll see
night.
you next month, hopefully.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.